Right now, somewhere in your company, a piece of work is just sitting there. Everyone did what they were assigned to do on the accountability chart. Every time something moves, a person is responsible. Nobody has ever drawn a map of how the work moves. Most companies, the honest answer is someone remembers. Work doesn't stall in seats, it stalls at the seams. Right now, somewhere in your company, a piece of work is just sitting there. Nothing's wrong with it. Nobody rejected it. It's finished and it has gone nowhere. Maybe it's the engineering design for the new product. Maybe it's the invoice for the work you did last Friday. Maybe it's the new client who signed, just waiting to get their onboarding call. Here's the thing. If you went hunting for the person who let it stall, you wouldn't find one. Everyone did what they were assigned to do on the accountability chart. This is the phenomenon you name when you say something fell through the cracks. Today, I'm going to show you where the cracks really are. And by the end of this episode, you're going to have a process to finally fill them. I'm Dori Etter, and this is Below the Waterline, the leadership work no one else talks about. We spent 3 episodes under the surface in identity, beliefs, and the work you love too much to let go of. Today, we're going to move above the waterline and we're going to look at structures because the 2 zones must move in tandem. And because there is a piece of the structure component above the waterline that almost no one builds. So let's get into it. I'm so excited to get into what we're going to talk about today. Because if you have implemented EOS and you still have these stalls, you must be frustrated with why. I know I was. I know that I implemented EOS with clients, but we still had these problems. And it wasn't until I came up with this solution that problem of things falling through the cracks and stalling finally ended. So my commitment to you is by the end of this episode, there's real content in here that you can use to make a difference in how your business operates. For it to make the most value to you, I want you to think of a recurring stall that you have. When I talked about something just sitting there in your business, you probably had something specific come to mind. I want you to hold that while we are going through this entire episode. So let's start with what you do today when you have a stall. When you encounter something that's just sitting there, what you almost always do is you go get it back into motion. You make a phone call, you send a Slack message, you walk down the hall to get people on it. And that is the right thing to do in the moment. But I also want you to pause and we need to go look for the crack that it fell through. Now, if you did this today, you would start with where you noticed it. Did it come from your bookkeeper? Maybe one of my favorite ones is you ask a question about something in a meeting and you're met with silence and just everyone looking at everyone else. So you go to the person who was supposed to move something forward and you ask, what happened? They're never going to tell you some sort of a confession. Yeah, I didn't do my job. They're going to say something like, well, I never got the final numbers from Bob. Or you go to Bob and Bob will say, well, I mentioned it on the Monday call. I told them I put it in the drive, or I've always put it in the drive. So the thing is, no matter how far back you trace it, where you go down that line, each person that you talk to believes that they fulfilled their piece of the puzzle. Every person feels like they're doing the right thing, yet it's still stalled. Now, it's really common to just think to yourself, well, of course, just telling someone in a meeting isn't enough. Or, If you finished it, why didn't you tell them they finished it? So what founders often do is they go have a conversation and say, hey, when you finish that, you need to notify somebody. And that feels good. It feels like you've solved something. But in reality, you did not fill the crack. So a handoff that exists in someone's mind, a handoff that someone is just supposed to remember to do, that is not going to stick. That is not going to be in place for very long. So I want you to consider that when you have those types of conversations, you're not actually filling the gaps. You're not building anything that is going to perpetuate long term. Now, I know if you're listening to this podcast, there is a high probability that you have done the systems work already. You have an accountability chart. You have seats defined. You have owners named. You maybe even have run EOS for a lot of years, and still things are falling through the cracks. Over time, you have done a few different things to try to prevent components from falling through the cracks, to fill as many of those cracks as you can. You started by thinking, well, maybe it's a people problem. So you hired better. You went through this whole, what is ownership? Working to make sure people knew they had urgency. The problem is you see people being brilliant with the things that they are accountable for. You see them with the urgency, you see them with the ownership. So you think, okay, well, that's maybe one piece of the puzzle, but that can't be the whole thing that's going to fill this gap. So now you think, okay, I just need to make sure people really understand what they're accountable for. And I'm going to do that by adding a metric that I'm going to measure that person on. This is one of the number one things that EOS says. Every person has a number. And if I just find the right number, that's going to solve this. So when you did that, things did seem to get a little bit sharper. Problem is, you still had things stall. You still had things fall through the cracks. They happened oftentimes in the same sort of handoffs. So then you said, all right, we need to get processes built. So you spent a quarter, sometimes more, getting all of the SOPs, getting all of the documents together so that you could know exactly what would be due, what needed to be done at each of the stages. The issue is that SOP, those procedures, went into a binder, either in your cabinet or on a drive somewhere, and has literally not been looked at since. So then you thought, all right, well, that's the thing. We need visibility. So you went looking for project management software. And now you still have visibility, right? Your visibility went up, but you still have gaps because that visibility was supported, but movement wasn't focused on. Now, as you have implemented these components, things have changed. Things have gotten a bit better. That is because you and a handful of others in your organization have gotten faster at rescues. The thing is, somewhere along the way, noticing stalled work and shoving it back into motion has become a job in and of itself. So you ask the question that restarts the proposal. Someone physically carries the context from the sales side to the delivery side. Somebody is responsible for chasing invoices, making sure they get sent. Every time something moves, a person is responsible. So we have learned that making things happen, it's like a personal responsibility. And certain people are the people who do that, and other people wait for those people to tell them what to do. It's built into your organization for some people to be the ones who drive the work, and some people to be the ones who do the work and wait for someone to drive. So I want to give you a real life example. I'm going to talk about a client that I have. They're in real estate. They have a long-time employee. I'm talking over 20 years of being a key employee in the business. They also have the giant binder of procedures and the project management tool. And when I say a binder of procedures, they literally have a written procedure on how to order lunch for the founder when he's in the office. So with all of that, you would think that they are completely set. This is a well-oiled machine and nothing can get in the way. Well, a couple of years ago, that key employee decided to move out of state. They did not want to leave the company, but they were committed to this move. And if it meant they had to leave the company, they would have to leave the company. So what happened? Immediate panic. What will we do without Pat? We created a remote work situation for them, which has been great for the company. It's been great for Pat. But even in that situation, what we lost was a key presence in the building. See, Pat was the only executive who came into the office every day. Now, we did the work to divide up the work that was in the accountability chart that Pat handled. And we hired a really great new employee. We hired another person. So we had an accountability chart in place. We had the work to divide the stuff. We had a very strong new hire. And we still spent months uncovering all the parts of each of the accountabilities that actually lived inside Pat's head. See, there were all these things that were done because Pat was there. She had been monitoring the gaps. She had been filling the cracks for so many years that they didn't even seem like cracks anymore. There are places in your business where things fall through and you utilize a person to fill it. There are places in your business where you think there is not a crack because something hasn't fallen through for so long, but it hasn't fallen through because of muscle, not because of a system. So what we are talking about here are literally the gaps. They are the things that don't land inside the accountability chart box. It's the things that travel between the boxes. So 90% of the time, I genuinely believe that 90% of the time that you have a recurring systems problem, it's not a person problem. It's not a documentation issue. It's a gap. There is a reason why we naturally say it fell through the cracks. We can feel the source of the problem. So what is missing in most systems and missing in EOS implementations is how to identify the cracks. So where are the cracks? They're between the seats. Every single crack is between one seat or another. The work is rarely going still inside anyone's actual role. It is going still in the space where one person's output has to become another person's input, and nobody has ever designed how that happens. See, work doesn't stall in seats, it stalls at the seams. And your seams are wide open because there is one missing drawing, one missing system in your company. And it's not just missing in your company. This is a missing that is missing in almost every company. Nobody has ever drawn a map of how the work moves. We have a map of who reports to who. We have a map of who owns what, but we do not have a map of how does the work move through the organization. So here's what that actually means, and I'm going to get into how you fix it. Your accountability chart answers a couple of questions. It answers what has to get done. It answers who is accountable for doing it, who owns the doing of that thing that needs to get done. And an accountability chart, it's a first step. I love it. It's one of the very first things I do when I go into any organization is ensure that the accountability chart is clear, it's accurate, and it's posted for people to be able to see it, run with it, use it. The thing is that your company doesn't actually run on ownership. It runs on movement. And movement is governed by a third question that is not in that chart. How does the work flow? How does the information that each person needs arrive at the right time in the right form from the right source? Right? The accountability chart is a map of ownership. What we need that almost no company has is a map of flow. I'm going to give you an analogy to really drive this home. Think about the building you're sitting in. Somewhere there's a drawing of the rooms, the walls, the doors, who sits where. You can think about that blueprint drawing as your accountability chart. Now, for your building, somewhere else, there's a second drawing, and that's a wiring diagram. It's the circuits behind the walls. We do not see them, but we depend on them being connected and accurate. You flip a switch, the light comes on. That happens because someone once designed that connection, wired it up. Just like a building needs both of those, your organization needs both drawings. Most of the time, you only have the first one. You have the boxes, but no wiring. You know who owns what, but we don't know how things move. And nothing moves on its own. Now, in my work, I call this second drawing the execution architecture. It's the layer between knowing who owns what and things actually getting done. It is a layer that EOS does not address. In this episode, I'm going to share with you the tools I use to solve for this when I work with businesses. I want to acknowledge that where we're going next, it is a lot. I'm working to break it down into the elements that you can use. But I want to be honest with you, you may need to watch or listen to this episode a couple of times. I'm providing a graphic of the key concepts. It's going to be in the show notes. You'll either find it on my website or on the YouTube channel. And there are 3 key components we're going to get into, and I'm going to talk to you about how to use them in your business.
The teaching, the training, the tools. Come back to episode 5 for the in-depth training.